I spent my whole life being a mother, a wife, a pillar of support, and in return, my son abandoned me in the heart of Rome, as if I were nothing more than excess luggage. He said I was a burden, a disruption in his picture-perfect family portrait. But I didn't cry, I didn't beg. Instead, I poured myself a cup of coffee, calmly sipped it while gazing at the city I had always dreamed of, and sent an email to my lawyer: sell the house, cut off all support, immediately. The house they're living in, the one under my name, I took it back. And that was the moment I stopped enduring and started living for myself. Before we dive into the story, feel free to leave a comment. Who knows, maybe my story was once someone else's too. It was a gray Thursday morning, the kind that settles on your skin like dust, making you feel older than your bones already do. I got up the way I always do, slow, careful, listening for the creaks that weren't there yesterday. In the kitchen, the silence was thick, not peaceful, just quiet in that lonely way. I reached up into the cabinet and pulled down my favorite mug, a white ceramic one, a little chipped on the handle. The kind of chip that catches your thumb just enough to remind you it's there. Best mom ever, it says in blue letters, faded. Now, Brad gave it to me when he was 8, with a crooked grin and chocolate on his face. I've had fancier mugs, but none like this one. I've wrapped my hands around it every morning for the last 30 years like it was a lifeline. Maybe it is. The coffee gurgled behind me. I stared at the mug and thought about Richard. He used to make the coffee every morning, like clockwork, a spoonful of sugar in mine, 2 in his. He said bitter coffee reminded him of his mother, sharp woman, died angry. You're not gonna be like her, right, Ellie? He'd say, smirking. I'd roll my eyes. Now, every time I reach for the sugar, I remember that damn line. Richard's been gone 7 years this November. Heart gave out during a nap. I was folding laundry. 1 minute, he was humming Sinatra in the recliner. Next minute, gone. Just like that. Life doesn't come with warning bells. It just takes. I didn't fall apart at the funeral. Not right away. I was too busy hosting people, pouring punch, answering questions like I was at a potluck instead of burying the love of my life. But after they all left and it was just me and the silence, I started to crack. Not a big, dramatic breakdown. No, it was slower than that. 1,000 little breaks over months. Burned dinners, forgotten appointments, sitting in the garage with the car running but nowhere to go. That kind of falling. Brad called more at first. He tried. You okay, Mom? I'd lie. I'm fine. But a mother knows when her child is just checking a box. Now, we talk when he needs something. Tuition, a new tire, rent, always something. He doesn't say, I love you anymore. Just thanks, Mom, you're the best. And then he's gone again. He's 32, still figuring things out. As he puts it, lives in Austin with a girlfriend I've never met. I pay the rent. I paid for college, twice. Actually, after he dropped out the first time, I helped with the car, health insurance, his dog's surgery, you name it. Once, I told him I wanted to see Rome, the Trevi Fountain, the Colosseum. I spent decades helping people get there. Honeymooners, retirees, teachers on break. I planned every detail, every layover. I even knew the best gelato stand near the Spanish Steps. But me, I've never even applied for a passport. I'll take you someday, he said. That was 10 years ago. I'm still waiting. You know what hurts most? Not the money, not even the disappointment. It's the silence. The way people stop asking what you want. You become invisible in your own damn life. Last Christmas, he sent me an Amazon gift card. No note, not even an email. I sat there staring at it like it was a slap. That morning, holding that chipped mug, I thought about Rome again. I pictured myself walking the cobblestone streets in worn-out sneakers, finally seeing something I'd only helped others experience. But I also knew I wouldn't go. Not now. Not with knees like these. Not when I might need that money for a hospital bill or, hell, a new furnace. I looked at the mug again. It trembled in my hand. You know, it's funny. People think grief is just sadness, but it's not. It's quiet. It's cold coffee, and a chipped mug, and a house too big for one person. It's the moment you realize no one's asked you in years what makes you happy. The truth is, I don't even know how I'd answer anymore. I took a sip of the coffee. It was bitter. I hadn't added sugar. Maybe I am turning into Richard's mother after all. It was Brad's idea. At least, that's how he framed it. We were thinking. he said over the phone, his voice a little too cheerful. Italy for the holidays, Rome, Florence, maybe Venice. What do you think, Ma? He made it sound like a gift. Like they were inviting me out of love. But I know my son. There's always a line between the words with him. A price tag hiding behind the ribbon. I didn't even hesitate. I'll cover the flights, I said. Too fast, maybe. But when you've been waiting your whole life to see Rome, and your son finally offers you a chance, even if he doesn't mean it the way you hoped, you grab it with both hands. I wired him $8,000 the next morning, the last of my retirement cushion. Not the whole account, just the leftovers. The maybe someday fund I'd been nursing for over a decade. I didn't even blink. Because Rome had been calling me for 40 years. Brad texted me the itinerary a week later. He booked all the tickets. One confirmation email for the whole family, 5 of them in business class. Brad, Amanda, his wife, Brianna, his daughter, 17, full of opinions, Ethan, 14, the quiet one, and me. But something felt off when I saw my seat number, for 2F. I looked it up, last row of the plane. Why am I in the back? I asked when I called him. Brad laughed. It's for your legs, Mom. More room in the back row. Trust me, it'll be better for you. I trusted him. I wanted to, but it didn't sit right. Still, I let it go. I told myself I was being sensitive, overthinking. That's what women my age are always accused of. At Logan Airport, the holiday, crowds swarmed like bees in a busted hive. I rolled my little suitcase behind me, the same one I'd used for conferences back in my working days. Still had a faded Delta tag from a 2002 trip to Phoenix. Sturdy thing. Reliable. Like me. They were already there, gathered near the check-in kiosk. Amanda had on a big floppy hat like she was heading to Cannes. Brianna was glued to her phone. Ethan waved, shy and sweet. Hi, Nana. That boy still saw me. I smiled and reached them, slightly out of breath. Is that your bag? Brianna asked, looking at my leather carry-on like it was radioactive. It's so vintage? She meant ugly. I chuckled. It was a gift. Your grandfather gave it to me for our 10th anniversary. He saved up for weeks. Amanda chimed in, all honey and sarcasm. Ah, how romantic. A brown satchel. Brad chuckled, nervous, glancing at me. But he didn't say a word. Not a defense, not a laugh. Just silence. That was the part that stung. Not the joke, not the bag. Him. At the gate, while they all clustered around Starbucks cups and iPads, I sat alone, holding on to the worn leather strap of my vintage bag. I watched the family I raised. Now so far from me it hurt to look. Amanda leaned into Brad, laughing. Brianna had her earbuds in, posting God knows what on some app. Ethan glanced over, every now and then, offering small smiles like band-aids. When they called for boarding, I waited for them to realize I wasn't sitting with them. They didn't. Amanda led the charge onto the plane like she was guiding a tour group, and Brad just followed. When I got to my seat, for 2F, I found myself wedged between the window and a man with a sleep mask already on. I stashed my bag under the seat and stared down the narrow aisle. I imagined them sipping champagne in business class, stretching out their legs, talking about plans, laughing. Not once did someone come check on me. They said it was so I'd have more room. But I knew better. They just didn't want me there. Not really. Not in the photos. Not in the experience. They gave me a seat at the edge so I could look in, but not belong. I leaned against the cold window and closed my eyes. It wasn't Rome I was flying toward anymore. It was the truth. I was no longer the center of anyone's story. Not even a main character, maybe not even background, just baggage. And somewhere in that quiet corner of the sky, I finally admitted it to myself. They'd already erased me from the picture, before we ever took off. The first morning in Rome, the sunlight poured through the hotel curtains like liquid gold. It hit the marble floors, the high ceilings, the little balcony I wasn't allowed to open, because Amanda said it was a safety hazard. I'd dreamt of this moment for decades. Rome, the eternal city. I'd memorized maps, read guidebooks cover to cover in my days as a travel agent. Back then, I helped honeymooners plan their once-in-a-lifetime trips here. I knew every quiet piazza, every whole trattoria tourists skipped. I'd tucked away all that knowledge, waiting for the day I could use it for myself. So when they all sat around the breakfast table that morning, Amanda already on her second espresso, Brianna scrolling, Brad rubbing his temples like fatherhood was a migraine. I cleared my throat and said, I thought maybe today we could see the Aventin keyhole. It's a little hidden spot, but when you look through it, you can see St. Peter's perfectly framed. It's breathtaking. Brad didn't even look up. I think we're just gonna do the big stuff today, Mom. Colosseum, Trevi, that kind of thing, Amanda added. Yeah, the kids aren't really into, like, secret gardens and whatever. I smiled. Or, I tried to. Of course, whatever works. But the truth is, it stung, not because they had other plans, but because they didn't even consider mine. At the Colosseum, the sun was sharp overhead, slicing across the ancient stones. Tourists swarmed in every direction. Ethan stuck by my side, asking questions like, did gladiators really fight lions? And did people really die here? I answered them all with care. It felt nice, for a moment. Being useful again. Needed. Then Brad shouted, okay, everyone, photo time. They lined up. Amanda fixing her hair, Brianna angling her body like she was born for Instagram, Brad positioning the kids just right. I stepped toward them. Can you take the photo, Mom? Brad asked, already handing me the phone. I nodded. Of course I could. I held the phone up, adjusted the frame, made sure the Colosseum curved perfectly behind them. I clicked a few shots, then hesitated. Ethan glanced over. Wait, Nana should be in one too. He looked at Brad. She came all this way. Brad sighed, like the suggestion was some major disruption. Okay. Someone asked a stranger, but no one moved. So I set the phone's timer and jogged over. I stood on the edge, next to Ethan, trying not to ruin the symmetry of their perfect pose. Amanda didn't move closer. Brianna barely turned. Brad gave me that tight-lipped smile, the one that says, we're doing this out of obligation, so don't make a big deal. The camera clicked. When Brad looked at the screen, I leaned in to see. There they were, bright, beautiful, perfectly lit, and there I was, a blurry outline at the edge. My face caught mid-blink, half-shadowed, like a stranger, wandered into the shot. They didn't ask to retake it. The next few days followed the same pattern. I offered suggestions: Villa Borghese Gardens, the quiet back streets of Trastevere, a tiny bookstore near Campo dei Fiori. Each time, Amanda wrinkled her nose, Brianna sighed, Brad said, maybe next time. I took pictures of them at Trevi, Fountain, at the Vatican, eating gelato near the Spanish Steps. I held the bags, adjusted camera angles, offered water bottles. Like a personal assistant, no one paid. Once, at Piazza Navona, I asked Brianna to take a photo of me. She snapped it, without looking, and handed the phone back. I was half out of frame, blinking in the sun, shoulders slouched. Not a single one of them asked to be in it with me. That night, in the hotel bathroom, I stared at that photo. I didn't look like someone living a dream. I looked like someone who'd been forgotten halfway through the story. On our last evening in Rome, Brad scrolled through his phone, showing Amanda the best shots to post. That one, she said, pointing. Crop your mom out though. It throws the balance. He hesitated. Yeah, she's kinda blocking the light, too. I said nothing. I went to bed early that night. My legs ached, but it wasn't from walking. All my life, I'd stood behind the lens. I took pictures of birthdays, graduations, anniversaries, capturing them, making sure they looked their best. Smiles, hugs, candles, confetti, but not once did anyone turn the camera around and say, here, let's get one with you in it. Now, at 73, in the most beautiful city I'd never seen until now, I finally understood. I was never really part of the picture, just the one holding the camera, just the one framing them. And in the end, what did I have to show? For it's a memory card full of everyone else's life, and not a single shot where I felt seen. It was our 4th day in Rome. The sun was high and bright, the kind of heat that presses against your back like someone trying to hurry you along. We'd just finished lunch, thin crust pizza at a touristy place off the Piazza Venezia. Underwhelming, but no one complained because they were too busy taking selfies. We stepped out into the street, and that's when Brad said, real casual, hey, how about we split up for a bit? I blinked. Split up? Yeah, he went on, not quite meeting my eyes. We want to do some souvenir shopping. Brianna wants a leather bag and Ethan wants to check out that game store we saw yesterday. Amanda chimed in, and your knees could probably use a rest, right, Ellie? That's how she always says my name, like it leaves a bitter taste. I gave a weak laugh. I'm fine. Really? But Brad was already dividing us like we were items in a grocery list. So, me, Brianna, Ethan, one group. Amanda can stay with you. We'll meet up later, I'll text you the location. Amanda didn't even pretend to agree. Actually, I might tag along with you guys, if that's okay. I want to see that artisan place near the Spanish Steps. Brad hesitated a second too long, then said, yeah, that's cool. And just like that, I was left standing there. Just hang around the square, Mom, Brad said. Get a coffee, maybe some gelato. I'll message you where to meet. I nodded, smiled, pretended it was fine, like I wasn't being parked like an old suitcase, like I hadn't just been voted off the island. I walked a little ways down, tried not to look like I was drifting. Found a shady spot near a gelateria, ordered a small cones, sat on a stone bench near a fountain, and watched tourists laugh, pose, live. My ice cream started to melt faster than I could keep up. It dripped onto my fingers, sticky and sweet, and I suddenly remembered holding Brad's hand when he was 5, trying to catch the drips from his cone before they ruined his shirt. He used to laugh and call me Ice Cream Cop. Now, 27 years later, I was sitting in the middle of Rome, alone, guarding my own melting scoop like it was the last good thing I had. I checked my phone. No messages. I wiped the sticky mess on a napkin, folded it neatly, and waited. 30 minutes passed, an hour. Then, still no word. I walked toward a small bookstore to kill time, touched the spines of books in languages I couldn't read, wondered if they held stories like mine, quiet, ignored, lost in the margins. By the 3rd hour, I stopped checking the phone every minute. I just kept it in my hand like a relic, something to hold on to. By the 4th hour, I was thirsty. My legs ached. My head was light. I found a public fountain, splashed cold water on my face, sat back down. That's when the message finally came. Brad, Mom, just head back to the hotel on your own. We've moved around a lot. It's too hard to find each other now. Honestly, you're kind of a burden today. I read it 3 times, thought maybe I misread it, maybe he was joking, but the words didn't change. A burden. My hands trembled as I tried to open the map app, but it wouldn't load. No data, no Wi-Fi. Rome buzzed around me. People, music, traffic, but none of it touched me. I was an island, unreachable. I tried retracing our route back to the hotel, got turned around twice, ended up in a narrow alley that led to a dead end, with 3 overflowing trash bins and a cat eating something I didn't want to identify. I wanted to cry, but I didn't. Not there. Not in front of strangers. I kept walking. My feet hurt. My phone battery was at 11%. I passed families holding hands, couples with matching sun hats, teenagers laughing over melted gelato, and me, an old woman with sweat down her back. Her pride cracked like cobblestones. I finally gave up near the Fontana dell'Acqua Pala, a smaller fountain, away from the crowds. I sank down on the stone steps, careful not to show too much pain in my movements, even though no one was watching. That was the thing. I'd been pretending for so long that someone was watching, that they might see me, care, include me. But sitting there, knees stiff, phone dead, surrounded by strangers speaking languages I couldn't understand, I finally got it. I wasn't even part of the family trip. I was just there, a logistical afterthought, a shadow tagging along. And now, I wasn't even that. I don't know how long I sat there. Could have been 20 minutes, could have been 2 hours. I watched the sun start to dip, the light softening over the stones. Rome was golden in the evening, warm and old and forgiving. Unlike my son, unlike me. Eventually, a kind young woman, British, I think, asked if I was okay. I lied. Of course I lied. I told her I was just resting. She offered to help with directions. I accepted, even though it burned my tongue to ask for help. We found my hotel together, 2 trains and a 10-minute walk later. She waved goodbye with a smile. I barely managed one back. When I walked into the hotel lobby, Brad and the others were already back, laughing, sorting through bags of souvenirs. Amanda held up a red leather purse, admiring it in the mirror. Brianna took selfies with her gel nails. Ethan looked up, met my eyes, and quickly looked down again. Brad glanced my way and said, flat as day-old toast. Oh, you made it. No apology, no concern, no acknowledgement, just a statement, like I'd returned from a grocery run. not from being abandoned in a foreign city. That night, I lay in bed, the ceiling fan spinning shadows across the walls. I stared up at the plaster and whispered, "You raised this boy. You protected him. You emptied yourself so he could be full. And now, I wasn't even worth waiting for, not even worth finding." The next morning, I couldn't make myself go down to breakfast. I heard them laughing in the hall outside the room. Amanda joking about shopping, Brianna complaining about another boring cathedral, Brad telling Ethan to stop whining, like the day before hadn't happened. Like I hadn't sat on a stone fountain, alone, for hours, abandoned like yesterday's luggage. They didn't ask where I went. They didn't ask how I got back. I waited until they left for the day. Another tourist bucket list adventure I'd been subtly excluded from. Then, I slipped out. I didn't take a map. I didn't care if I got lost again. I walked the streets slowly, feeling the ache in my knees but not letting it stop me. Rome looked different when I wasn't trying to keep up with someone else's itinerary. The sunlight was softer, the buildings more alive. I wandered through narrow cobblestone lanes until the chatter of tourists faded and I found myself in a small piazza. There was a cafe tucked into the corner, faded blue awning, wooden chairs out front. A sign above the door read Caffè di Nino. I don't know why I stopped. Maybe it was the smell, strong coffee, warm pastries, or maybe it was just the need to sit somewhere I didn't feel like I was in the way. I settled into a chair. My shoulders dropped for the first time in days. A man came out from behind the counter. Older than Brad, younger than me, heavy around the middle, white shirt slightly wrinkled, but his smile was open and kind. "You want espresso or Americano?" he asked, with a thick Italian accent. "Americano, please," I said. He nodded and turned back inside. A few minutes later, he returned with a warm cup and a small biscotti on the side. "No charge," he said, setting it down. I blinked. "Oh no, I'll pay." He shook his head. "You sad eyes," he said, pointing gently, "is okay. One coffee free for sad eyes." I let out a surprised laugh. Not out of joy, exactly, but it broke something open in me, like the first breeze after a long storm. He sat across from me. "I am Marco," he said. "This cafe, my father's. I run now." I nodded, "Ellie. I'm visiting." He gave me a look like he already knew everything he needed, like the lines on my face told more than my words ever could. He didn't press, just sat there sipping his own espresso, watching the square like it was a stage and he'd seen the play 1,000 times. After a while, I started talking. Not much at first, just bits. "My family's here, vacation. Then, they're out today." I stayed back. Then, slowly, like a faucet loosening, I told him everything. I didn't plan to, but the words came on their own. The flight, the photos, the ice cream, the silence, my son. I paused, embarrassed. He left me, in the middle of the city. Marco didn't blink. He just sipped, waited. I laughed, bitter. "You ever realize your whole life's been wrapped around people who don't even see you?" He finally spoke. "Yes, once, long ago." And just like that, I didn't feel so stupid. An hour passed. Then too, I didn't feel the time. When I finally stood up, unsure what to do next, Marco looked at me and said, "You have hotel?" I nodded, hesitantly, "But I don't really want to go back yet." He nodded slowly, then offered, softly, "My cousin, he live north, not here. His small apartment is empty. If you want, you stay there, safe, quiet." I hesitated. Every lesson about strangers, about being cautious, about not imposing, it all buzzed in my head. But then I remembered how it felt yesterday, alone, forgotten, unseen. And this man, Marco, he saw me. "Are you sure?" I asked. He smiled. "It is small, but clean. Balcony, good view." That evening, I followed Marco up narrow stairs to the second floor of a weathered building just around the corner. The apartment was tiny, one room, kitchenette, old tile floors, but warm, with a little table by the window and a fan that rattled, quietly. Later, we sat out on the balcony with 2 cups of coffee. He brought fresh bread and a dish of olives. Below us, Rome glowed in twilight, pink skies over orange rooftops. "This," I whispered, "is how I imagined it." Marco looked at me. "Rome is not what people see in picture. Rome is this balcony, coffee, small kindness." I nodded, feeling something in my chest unwind. "I wanted to come here for 50 years, I said. "I planned it for other people, gave them their dreams, never took my own. He was quiet for a moment. Then, he said something that stayed with me forever. Family, he began, his words slow but sure. Family is not only blood. Family is people who don't leave you when you are alone, when you are small. I looked at him, eyes stinging. Your son, forget your heart, but you still have heart. That night, I fell asleep with the window open, Rome breathing through the curtains, and the heavy silence in my chest finally cracking just enough to let something warm in. I wasn't fixed. I wasn't whole, but I wasn't invisible either. Not here, not anymore. The apartment Marco let me stay in had no TV, no air conditioning, and no coffee machine. But it had something I hadn't had in years. Silence that didn't feel cruel. I sat by the window for hours, watching the sun slide over the roofs of Rome, listening to the hum of the street below, and thinking, really thinking, for the first time in a long while. It was around hour 4 of that quiet when I picked up my phone and called Barbara Marks. Barbara's been my best friend since 1979. We met when I sold her a honeymoon package to Cancun. Her husband left her before the trip, but she went anyway. That alone should tell you what kind of woman Barbara is. She became a lawyer after raising 3 kids alone, and she's been my attorney ever since Richard passed. Barb, I said, my voice cracking a little. She knew immediately. Where are you? Rome. A pause. Then, softly, you don't sound like you're enjoying yourself. I laughed. I'm not, but I might be waking up. She let me talk. I told her everything. Not the pretty version, the raw version. The abandonment, the insult, the melting ice cream, the kind man with the cafe, and the warm smile. I expected her to jump in with outrage, but she didn't. Barbara's not built like that. She waits, she weighs, and when she speaks, she doesn't waste a syllable. After I finished, there was a beat of silence. Then, you're ready. That's all she said. I didn't need to ask what she meant. 3 days later, sitting with a borrowed laptop Marco's cousin kept in a drawer with old chargers and unpaid bills, I opened my email and stared at the draft I'd been editing for hours. To Barbara Marks-esque subject. Immediate action required. Barbara, please proceed with the sale of the property at 219 Meadowbrook Lane. I am authorizing you to terminate any and all ongoing financial support currently extended to Brad Whitmore from my estate, effective immediately. Best, Eleanor Whitmore. Yes, Eleanor, that's my name. Ellie was always the name people called when they wanted something. That Eleanor is who I am when I finally say no. Before I hit send, I called her one more time. Barb, I said, you sure we can do this? The deed's still in your name, she said. You never signed it over. You were too cautious. I sighed. Good thing for once, she added, gently. Mags, Eleanor, once we move, there's no going back. You cut him off, he may never speak to you again. I closed my eyes. He already doesn't speak to me, Barb. He just ... uses me. She was quiet, then said, okay. But I want you to understand, this will change everything. I don't want everything, I said. Just something that's mine. Something that doesn't make me feel like a ghost with a checkbook. She exhaled. God, I love you. I know. I smiled. But love doesn't come with rent, does it? I hit send. That sound, the little whoosh of an email flying off into the ether, felt louder than any scream I could have let out. That email was a brick. The first stone laid in the foundation of the life I was building. I didn't cry. I didn't shake. I made tea. Marco found me later on the balcony, hands wrapped around the chipped mug. You write something important, he asked, noticing the glow in my cheeks. I did, I said. He sat beside me. We watched the sky darken into that purplish Rome dusk I'd come to love. I sold my house today, I said after a pause. His eyes widened. Big house. Big enough, but not for me anymore. He nodded slowly. Then, with that quiet wisdom of his, he said, sometimes, we carry people who forget how heavy they are. I looked at him. He added, you, no carry anymore. I shook my head. No, they said I was a burden, so I'm taking that burden off their shoulders. He smiled. That is good. That is strong. I let out a breath I didn't know I'd been holding. They won't see it that way, I said. Brad, call me cruel. Amanda will curse me. Brianna won't understand. Ethan will, maybe someday he will. Marco looked toward the rooftops, then back at me. Family is not who you carry. Family is who carry you back. That night, I wrote a letter. Not an email, a letter. pen and paper, the old-fashioned way. I addressed it to Brad. Dear Brad, I've spent my whole life loving you with everything I had, my money, my time, my heart, and somewhere along the way, you stopped seeing me as a mother and started seeing me as a resource. I am not angry. I am simply done. You will figure things out. Or you won't. Either way, I will not be the crutch you lean on when it's convenient, only to forget I exist when it's not. I love you, always, but I also love myself now. And it's time I proved that. Mom, I didn't know if I'd send it. Maybe just writing it was enough. But one thing was certain. I wasn't going back to that house. That life. They called me a burden. Fine, then let me unburden them, starting with their illusion of ownership. The next morning, I watched the light spill across the city again. Rome had shifted for me. It wasn't just a place anymore. It was a beginning. And as I stood on that little balcony, hair still tangled, no makeup, heart humming low like a violin string, Marco handed me a small, steaming cup of coffee. Signora Eleanor, he said, grinning. And just like that, I smiled back, because he was the first person in years to call me by my real name. Brad and his perfect little family returned to Massachusetts 2 days after I cut the last cord. They arrived at 219 Meadowbrook Lane, the house I had paid off over 30 years ago, and found a bright orange notice taped across the front door. For sale by owner pending closing. Do not enter. According to Barbara, who called me just to keep you informed. Not to stir anything, as she said. Amanda lost it, screaming in the driveway, dragging suitcases out of the Uber, yelling about squatters' rights and emotional damage. Brad didn't scream, not at first. He just stood there, staring at the sign like it was written in another language. But then came the calls. 48 missed calls in 1 hour. 17 voicemails, none of which I listened to. Then came the text messages, all caps at first. Mom, what did you do? You can't do this to us. Followed by the guilt-tripping ones. The kids are confused. You're tearing this family apart. After everything I've done for you. And finally, the desperate, just talk to me. Please, one last time. I didn't respond. I blocked the number. Then I blocked Amanda's. Then Brianna's, just in case. I left Ethan's unblocked not because I thought he'd reach out, but because if he ever did, I wanted him to know the line was still open. Back in Rome, life moved at a different rhythm. Slower, less demanding, more mine. I woke up when I wanted to. Some days at dawn, watching the first light cut across the terracotta rooftops. Some days not, until the smell of Marco's coffee drifted through the cracks in the shutters. I took a beginner's Italian class at the community center 3 blocks from the cafe. I was terrible at it. My accent was a mess and I kept mixing up the words for thank you and gravy, but I laughed more in that class than I had in a decade. I bought an old camera from a flea market, 30 euros, a little scratched, but it worked. Marco showed me how to load the film. I started walking the city with it, snapping whatever caught my eye. Not the landmarks, just life. A cat curled in a window. A child with gelato all over their chin. The lines on Marco's face when he smiled. I even went to the market with him on Thursdays. He haggled in rapid-fire Italian, while I followed with a woven basket and wide eyes. I started learning the names of herbs I'd never cooked with and fruits I'd never dared try. No one asked me to smile. No one expected me to pay for anything but my own groceries. No one needed me to prove my worth, just to be allowed at the table. One night, Marco made pasta with clams and poured us each a glass of wine so red it looked like velvet. We ate on the balcony. The air was warm. A dog barked down below. Someone played an accordion half a street away. I leaned back, hands wrapped around my wine glass, and for the first time in years, I smiled. Not the tight, polite kind. Not the I'm fine kind. A real one. Soft, whole, mine. But later that night, lying in bed, a question slipped in through the cracks like cold air. Was I being cruel? I stared at the ceiling, at the fan lazily turning in the dark. Brad's voice echoed in my head. You're tearing this family apart. Amanda's fake concern. Brianna's eye rolls. Ethan's quiet, uncertain gaze. Was I punishing them? Had I become the very kind of person I used to fear becoming? Spiteful, sharp, cutting off her own nose just to make a point. I turned the thought over again and again. And then, slowly, I answered myself. No, I wasn't punishing anyone. I was living. For the first time in decades, I was doing what everyone around me had done freely, their whole lives. Choosing what I wanted, without apology. Brad had made choices he'd chosen to take and never give back. Amanda had chosen to sneer instead of reach out. Brianna had chosen to treat me like clutter. They all lived by their own rules: comfort first, convenience second, and connection only if it costs nothing. So now I was choosing too, and my choice was to stop being their silent foundation. The invisible scaffolding holding up a life that never made room for me. The next morning, I opened my little journal and wrote at the top of the page, Eleanor's house rules: wake up slow, drink the coffee hot, say yes to the small things. Say no to being invisible, laugh loud, even if you snort. Live where the sky is bigger than the roof, choose yourself. I smiled at the list. It didn't feel radical, but it felt true, and maybe, just maybe, that was enough. Some people say revenge is petty. I disagree. Revenge, when done with grace, isn't about hurting someone. It's about freeing yourself from the weight they've piled on you, and watching them flail when they realize they can no longer lean on you for balance. They called me a burden, so I lifted myself off their shoulders. And now they're standing in the ruins of a house they thought they owned, wondering when it stopped being theirs. The answer: it never was. It was mine. And now, so is everything I choose from this point forward. The call came on a quiet Wednesday afternoon. Marco had gone out to meet a supplier at the market, and I was sitting on the balcony with a crossword and a cup of lukewarm tea. The phone buzzed once, twice, a US number. I almost didn't answer, but something nudged me. When I picked up, there was a pause, then a voice, soft, uncertain. "Hi Nana, it's me, Ethan." My heart didn't race. It folded, like paper, creased at the corner. "Ethan," I said, careful not to sound too surprised. "Hi sweetheart." He cleared his throat. I sent you something. A letter. I know that sounds old-fashioned. I didn't want to text. This felt better. We didn't talk long. He didn't ask where I was, and I didn't offer. He just said, "Please read it when it gets there." Then he hung up, quiet and quick, like someone who'd just dropped a stone into a lake and didn't want to stay to see the ripples. 3 days later, a plain envelope arrived. No return address. Just my name, written in tight teenage handwriting. Eleanor Whitmore, Roma, Italia. Marco brought it in with the groceries. Looked at it curiously and set it on the table beside my journal. I didn't open it right away. I stared at it like it might vanish, like it wasn't real. When I finally did, I unfolded 3 pages of lined notebook paper, every inch filled with words, crossed out and rewritten, ink smudged at the corners. The first line hit me right in the chest. "Dear Nana, I'm sorry I didn't stand up for you when it mattered most." I read it slowly, twice. Ethan didn't make excuses. He didn't blame his age, his parents, the moment. He just told the truth. I knew it was wrong. I knew we shouldn't have left you alone in the city like that, but I didn't know how to say it out loud. I was scared. I'm still scared. But I've been thinking about you every day since that trip, and I hate what we did. He wrote about the fallout back home. "We're staying with Aunt Marlene in her basement right now. Brianna won't even go to school anymore because people found out about the house. Amanda cries at night when she thinks I can't hear. Dad's angry all the time, mostly at the world, but sometimes at me." I paused there, not because I felt vindicated, but because I could suddenly picture it all too clearly. The cold, unfinished walls, the tension hanging in the air like fog, the heaviness of a family who'd lost the one person holding them together without even realizing it. "I'm not writing to guilt you. I just want you to know that I see it now. I see what we did to you, what Dad did, what I let happen, and if there's any way, any chance, I could make it right someday, I'd like to try." His last lines were the ones that made my hands shake. "I graduate next spring. I want to come see you, not to ask for anything, just to learn from you, to sit and listen. I want to know the woman I was too stupid to defend. Please don't throw this away. Love, Ethan." I didn't cry, but my vision blurred as I folded the pages back together. Not from sadness, from something quieter, softer, hope, that gentle, terrifying feeling that maybe not all is lost, that maybe some threads are still intact, waiting to be knotted again. Later that evening, I sat with Marco on the balcony. The sun was beginning to fall, and the city turned gold, then lavender. I handed him the letter, not sure why, just needing someone else to see it, to hold the weight with me. He read it slowly, lips moving silently. When he finished, he looked at me with something almost like pride. He is not the same boy. No, he said softly. I nodded. He sounds older. Marco handed the letter back gently, like it was fragile glass. Do you forgive? I didn't answer. Forgiveness isn't a light switch. It's not an instant thing. It's a long, crooked road you walk barefoot. But I told him the truth. I don't know yet. He smiled. The kind that wrinkles your whole face. But you smile when you speak of him now, he said. That is beginning. I looked out at the rooftops, Rome breathing around me like a warm blanket. He didn't lie, I said. There was no performance in that letter, no excuses, just a boy trying to find the pieces. Marco took my hand. Then, maybe, you meet him where he is, not where he was. That night, I placed Ethan's letter inside my journal, tucked safely behind the page where I'd once written, Eleanor's house rules, under rule number 7, choose yourself. I scribbled something new in the margin, 7b, leave a door open for those who knock with their hearts. Because I don't know what kind of man Ethan will grow up to be. But I do know this, he's already better than the one who raised him. And that gives me a reason to believe, not in the past, not in what was lost, but in what might still be found. I wrote back to Ethan the day after I finished reading his letter for the 3rd time. I didn't rush. I didn't pour it out in a flood of emotion. I sat down with pen and paper, real paper, not email, and wrote like someone who had learned the value of her own words. Carefully, with weight, with honesty. Dear Ethan, first, thank you for your letter. I read it slowly, and I read it more than once, not because I doubted your words, but because I wanted to feel every one of them. I did. I believe you meant what you wrote, and that means more to me than I can say. But belief alone doesn't build bridges. For bridges to last, they need effort, on both sides. That's why I need to be clear with you, not as a punishment, but as an invitation. If you truly want to come to Rome and spend time with me, here are 3 things I ask. I paused there, thinking of how long I'd gone in life without asking anything for myself. 1. You pay your own way. If this means saving up after graduation, so be it. I've spent a lifetime financing the comfort of others. I need this visit to come from you, not from my bank account. 2. You are honest with your parents. They will not like this trip. They may guilt you, or fight you, or try to twist your intentions, but you must be clear with them that this visit is about you, about us. I won't be part of a secret or a lie. 3. When you come, you accept who I am now. I am not the woman who baked cookies on Sundays and ironed your dad's shirts. I live in a borrowed apartment above a cafe. I speak bad Italian. I burn toast. I laugh loud. I am rebuilding, not retreating. If you can agree to these things, not just say yes, but live them, then my door is open, my table is open, my heart will its healing, and you're welcome in that space, too. With love and hope, Nana Eleanor. The next morning, I folded the letter, slid it into an envelope, and handed it to Marco. He walked with me to the post office, his hand warm round mine the whole way. You did good, he said, as we dropped the letter into the red metal box. You did not build wall, you build gate. Later that afternoon, Marco surprised me. Today, he said, smiling like he had a secret, we take picture, real picture. I raised an eyebrow. Of what? You, he said, pointing. Trevi. I laughed. Marco, I've been to Trevi, remember? I took their pictures, always from the back or the side, or not at all. He nodded. But today, we go for you. You stand in center. You smile for you. We took the metro and walked the rest of the way. The crowd wasn't small. Rome rarely gives you privacy, but I didn't care. The fountain roared behind me, water crashing against marble in that ancient, endless rhythm. I stepped forward, right to the edge. Marco lifted the camera, adjusted the lens. I hesitated for a second, then took a deep breath and stepped into the center of the frame. No one told me to smile. No one posed me. I didn't suck in my stomach or angle my face. I didn't wonder if my hair was frizzy, or if I looked grandma enough or young enough or anything enough. I just stood there, and I smiled. Not for Ethan, not for Brad, not for the version of me I used to chase like a shadow. I smiled because I had made it. At 20, I dreamed of standing here. Back then, it was a fantasy of white dresses, Italian, lovers, maybe a Vespa. But that girl, she wasn't strong enough to come alone. She was always waiting to be invited. Well, I wasn't 20 anymore, and I didn't need an invitation. I'd already arrived. Marco showed me the photo later, back at the cafe. No filter, no edits, just me. Arms relaxed, eyes lifted slightly to the side like I was seeing something only I understood. And my eyes, God, my eyes. They weren't sad anymore. They were alive, not lit up by any camera trick, not softened by angles or gloss, just real, and mine. Marco leaned over my shoulder and whispered, "That is a woman who has come home." I didn't respond. I couldn't. My throat was too tight, because he was right. Not to a country, not even to a city, but to herself. That photo now sits on my nightstand. I look at it sometimes before bed, not out of vanity, but because it reminds me, I'm not blurry anymore. I'm not cropped out. I'm not a footnote. I'm the whole damn frame. And for the first time in my life, I believe that's exactly where I belong. My 74th birthday came quietly, like Rome always does in the early hours, no fanfare. Just the clink of cups downstairs in Marco's cafe and the hum of a scooter somewhere down the alley. I woke up, tucked into that small bed I'd grown to adore. The sheets rumpled from sleep, my hair a wild halo. But for the first time in years, my heart felt calm, balanced, even no racing thoughts, no ache, just stillness, the kind that doesn't demand anything from you. Marco had made up his mind before I even opened my eyes. "Not big," he said, lifting both palms like he was surrendering. "No stress, just food, just friends." And he meant it. No pressure, no grand plan, just what my soul needed. We pulled a long wooden table out in front of the cafe. Right there on the cobblestones, under strings of lights Marco hung that morning just for the occasion. Sabine, my lovely neighbor from the flower shop a few doors down, arrived carrying a chipped ceramic vase bursting with wild daisies. Tom, the sharp-witted American who teaches English to retired Italians, showed up with a couple bottles of red and launched right into one of his signature sarcastic toasts that had everyone belly laughing before the first glass was even poured. A handful of locals I'd come to know simply by sharing space with them. At the market, in class, at Marco's counter, wandered in with warm embraces, cheek kisses, and the kind of laughter that feels like home. There was no towering birthday cake, no frosting or fanfare, just a perfectly imperfect pistachio tart from Marco's oven. He stuck a single candle into the center, crooked and leaning, like an afterthought. But to me, it felt just right. I didn't make a wish when I blew it out. Not because I forgot, but because I didn't need to. What I had around me wasn't something I was hoping for anymore. It was something I was living, real, tangible, mine. Halfway through the evening, sometime after the third glass of wine and the second round of shared stories, Marco walked over and handed me his phone. "Message for you," he said, his voice softer than usual, his eyes unreadable. I looked at the screen. It was a text from Brianna. "Happy birthday, Nana. I'm sorry. I know that's late, but I mean it." That was all. No emojis, no glittering gifs, no elaborate explanations, just one short, honest sentence. And somehow, it cracked something open in me more deeply than 1,000-word apology ever could. I slipped quietly inside the cafe, stepped into the kitchen, and stood there for a while. I didn't cry. I didn't fall apart. I just let myself breathe. Deep, slow, present. Because here was this girl, this young woman, who once rolled her eyes at everything I touched, called my handbag vintage like it was a contagious illness, and posed beside me in vacation photos like I was hired help. And now she was reaching for something. It wasn't a grand gesture, but it was a start, and it was enough. The next morning, I got up early, made myself a cup of coffee, and sat at the small kitchen table by the window where the morning sun spills in just right. I pulled out the same notebook I'd used before, the same fountain pen with the slightly leaky nib. But this time, as I began writing a letter to Ethan, my hand was steady. No tremble, no second-guessing, just clarity, purpose, and maybe even a little peace. "Dear Ethan, thank you for giving me the space to take my time. I didn't want to rush this, didn't want to write out of guilt or impulse. I needed the words to feel real, not rehearsed. What you sent me wasn't just a letter. It was a light, turned on in a room I thought I'd locked years ago. It found places in me I didn't even know were still there, places that had gone quiet, dusty, but your words brought them back to life." As I read, I saw glimpses of that little boy I used 2-pack peanut butter sandwiches for, no crust, just the way you liked them. The one who stood on a stool beside me while I stirred soup, asking big, curious questions about stars and black holes and where the sky went when it got dark. I didn't just remember him, I saw him again, and I saw someone else, too. A young man learning to speak from his heart. You asked if you could come visit. The answer is yes. Wholeheartedly, yes. If you're still open to meeting the woman I've grown into. The version of me who lives in a quirky little apartment above a cafe, who talks with her hands, messes up her Italian daily, and burns toast like it's an art form, then I'll be right here, ready to meet you, not as a keeper of the past, but as someone ready to build something new, starting from this moment forward. Let's begin again, from where we are, with love, Nana. I folded the letter with care, sealing it like something sacred. Then I slipped on my sandals, tucked the envelope into my bag, and walked to the post office myself. The late morning sun was golden and kind, warming my shoulders like a soft hand. Rome was alive with its usual sounds, the rattle of espresso cups, scooters buzzing like bees, a distant accordion playing a tune I couldn't name. But this time, I didn't feel like a visitor drifting through it. I felt like part of the rhythm, like I finally belonged to the beat. That night, after Marco locked up the cafe and kissed my forehead goodnight, I stepped out onto the little balcony that's become my favorite place in the world. The city shimmered in the dark, windows blinking with life, laughter spilling out of narrow alleys, and music floating from some hidden corner. Below me, a couple strolled slowly, their arms tangled together, a half-finished bottle of wine swinging from her fingertips. Somewhere, a cat let out a long, echoing yowl, melancholy, a little dramatic. Very Roman. I tilted my head to the sky, the stars soft above the rooftops, and whispered, just above the breeze, "Do you see me, Richard? I made it. I lived." And then, I said the one thing I'd never let myself believe until now. The one truth that had finally rooted itself deep in my bones, and this time, I chose it. Not for you. Not for Brad. Not for what could have been. Just for me. I don't know what's next. Maybe Ethan will come like he said. Maybe Brianna will write again. Her words, a little steadier this time. Maybe Brad never will, but I won't be waiting anymore. Not by the phone, not checking the mailbox, not leaving space in my day for someone else's silence. I'm living now, and that's enough. I'm learning the language of laughter again. I'm taking pictures with me in the center. I'm learning to love my reflection, not for who she used to be, but for who she's still becoming. And maybe that's what rebirth really looks like. Not balloons, not candles, but a soft smile on a quiet street, with the warm weight of your own name finally resting gently in your bones. Eleanor, that's who I am now. And she's just getting started. 1 year after my 74th birthday, I was still in Rome. Not as a tourist, not as someone passing through, not even as someone hiding from their past, but as a woman who had planted roots in a place where she bloomed, not because of who she had been, but in spite of it. The apartment above Marco's cafe had become my home. It wasn't big, just 2 rooms, slanted ceilings, and windows that stuck in the summer, but it breathed with me. I filled it with green things, basil, lavender, rosemary. Some grew wild, others died and were replaced. That was fine. So did I. On the walls, I hung my own photos. Not perfect ones, no filters, no edits, but ones I'd taken with that old flea market camera. A child laughing at pigeons, a woman hanging laundry from a window, a man playing violin with his eyes closed. Life, as it was, beautiful in its ordinariness. In the kitchen, scraps of Italian poetry were taped above the stove. Phrases I loved, lines that reminded me I wasn't just learning a language, I was letting it shape me. Each morning began the same way. I'd rise early, just before the light touched the rooftops, and shuffle into the kitchen. I'd grind the beans slowly, carefully, the way Marco had taught me, and make coffee with the old hand-brewed fin he gave me last Christmas. It dripped slow. It made me wait. I liked that. While the coffee brewed, I opened the shutters and breathed in the scent of basil and city air. I watered my plants on the balcony, whispering to them in half Italian, half English, like they knew the difference. Then I'd sit at the table, coffee warm between my hands, and write in my notebook. Not pages, just a few lines, observations, questions, gratitudes, nothing I'd ever show anyone, just proof, for myself, that I was still present. I called it the Journal of the Woman I Found Again. My Italian had gotten better. I'd graduated from beginner classes and now sat in advanced sessions with folks from all over. Retired Germans, Brazilian artists, Moroccan nannies. Sabine, my friend from the flower shop, said she was jealous of my accent, which was rich coming from a Parisian. We'd laugh together after class, argue over pasta recipes, and walk arm in arm through weekend markets. She didn't know everything about me, but she didn't need to. What mattered was that she never asked about my past, and never made me feel like I had to explain it. None of them did. Tom, Chiara, Lucia, our little group, met every Sunday evening. We shared food from our homes, read poetry, swapped photographs and stories. There was no pressure, no pity, just presence. And in that space, I healed more than any therapy room ever gave me. Ethan came in the summer. He sent a message. First, I've saved enough. I'd like to come, if the invitation still stands. It did. He arrived with a beat-up backpack and eyes full of nervous hope. He stayed in a modest hostel nearby, refused to let me pay for anything, said he'd been working weekends at a bookstore, back home, and tutoring math to kids in the neighborhood. One night, while we sat on the balcony with bowls of spaghetti I'd cooked far too soft, he turned to me and, in broken Italian, said, "Mi dispiace, sei molto importante per me. Non lo capivo prima. I'm sorry, you're very important to me." I didn't understand that before. I didn't cry, I just took his hand and said, "It's enough, Ethan, I hear you." We walked the city together that week. He didn't ask for stories about Brad, and I didn't offer them. We visited museums, laughed over gelato, and took a photo in front of Castel Sant'Angelo. And when he left, he hugged me tight and said, "I'll come back, not to fix anything, just to be near you." That boy, he had my heart in ways his father never did. Amanda and Brad did write a single letter. It arrived in a pale envelope, addressed in Brad's familiar scrawl. I recognized Amanda's voice behind the words, though, the polished apologies, the vague acknowledgments, nothing concrete, no ownership, no real remorse. I didn't reply, not because I hated them. I didn't. I just hadn't healed enough yet, and maybe I never would, not in the way they wanted, not in a way that made me pick up the thread and pretend the fabric was never torn. Some wounds don't scab, they stay open, but stop bleeding. That was enough for me. One Saturday, I wandered through Piazza Navona alone. Marco was working. Sabine was in Paris. The city buzzed with heat and chatter. I sat on a bench with a lemon, granita in one hand and my camera slung over my shoulder. A young man approached me, early 20s, with a battered Nikon and kind eyes. "Pusso," he asked, motioning to the camera. "Can I take your photo? You look striking." I blinked. "No one's ever asked me that before," I said, caught off guard. He smiled. "Then maybe it's about time." I nodded, stood up, smoothed the back of my linen shirt, and let him frame me, not as a grandmother, not as a woman forgotten, not as anyone but myself. He clicked the shutter. Just once, no poses, no preparation, just me, standing under the Roman sun, in a city I chose, in a life I made. It was the first time someone wanted to photograph me, not out of obligation, but because I meant something in the frame. I was the subject, not a prop, and I smiled. Not for them, not for legacy, just for me. That photo now hangs in my kitchen, next to a line of poetry I wrote in bad Italian. La vita vera inizia quando smetti di sopravvivere e inizi ad esistere. Real life begins when you stop surviving and start existing. And that's what these days are now. Not heavy, not lonely, just mine. Not endured, not chased, lived, fully. Finally, it took me many years to understand this. No one has the right to define your worth except you. You are not a wallet. You are not someone else's tissue, wiping away their tears while silently swallowing your own. You are not a burden just because you no longer serve the role they expected of you. You are a human being, with emotions, with desires, with a youth, perhaps long gone, but still yours. And that deserves respect, because you deserve to live by your own choices. After everything I've been through, I've learned. Forgiveness is not weakness, but silence, allowing others to keep hurting you. That is the real weakness. You can still love them, still remember them in quiet moments, but you don't have to stay in a place where, even if they had a lifetime, they'd still never see your worth. Walking away is not revenge, it is self-preservation. It is a form of self-love. I also learned something simple, yet profound. Happiness isn't found in grand things, it's in the cup of coffee you brew for yourself each morning, in watering the plant you grew with your own hands, in laughter with a new friend, someone who doesn't care who you were in the past. And if you ask me, do I wish I had done this sooner? My answer is no, because I needed to endure all that pain so that in this moment, I could finally know what I truly deserve. And now, I want to ask you, if you were me, standing in Piazza Navona, that day when a stranger wanted to take your photo, not out of duty, not out of pity, but because your very presence had meaning, what would you do? Would you say yes? Would you smile? Would you believe that the light isn't in a filter, but in your eyes, when you finally live as your true self? I hope you'll share your thoughts in the comments, and if this story made you feel seen, even just in a small way, let me know. I no longer need to be seen by the whole world. I just need to be seen by myself. And if I could do it, so can you. May God always bless you.